Today, I want to talk about Daredevil. Oh god, no, not that one. This Daredevil. The final episode of Netflix's Daredevil aired in 2018, but this is the first time I've watched it all the way through. I watched the first season back when it first came out, but I wasn't really interested in the Netflix shows back then. But since Daredevil is one of my favorite comic book characters, I figured it's time for me to revisit it. And what better time than with the rumors of Daredevil's return to the MCU. I mostly want to talk about Daredevil Season 3, but first I'll give my quick thoughts on the first two. Season 1 is a classic origin story, and the introduction of these characters is handled so well. Charlie Cox is a great casting for Matt Murdock, and he's able to bring a physicality to both sides of Daredevil's double life. Kingpin is the perfect villain for this series, and he is brought to life brilliantly by Vincent D'Onofrio. His slow villainous introduction and the eventual build-up to Matt getting the Daredevil suit is a perfect way to end Season 1 and make it feel like its own self-contained story while still laying the groundwork for future stories. Season 2, on the other hand, is an obvious step down in quality. On the one hand, the introduction of the Punisher and the trial of Frank Castle are awesome and they feel like something right out of a comic book. But the other half of the season with Elektra and the Hand feel completely out of place. I don't think this storyline was necessarily the worst place they could have taken Season 2, but with this going on at the same time as the Punisher storyline, it just feels like too much happening at once, and it's very tonally inconsistent. This series works best as a grounded, character-driven narrative, so when it starts introducing magic and immortal ninjas or whatever, it feels a little jarring. Season 3 of Daredevil is one of the most compelling and overlooked pieces of superhero media we've ever gotten. This whole series reminds me a lot of the Dark Knight trilogy, but this third season specifically reminds me a lot of the Dark Knight Rises because we see our character start at his lowest point but eventually rise from the ashes to reclaim the lost city. The best part of this season, in my opinion, is how the characters are used to show obvious moral comparisons to Matt Murdock. First, you have Karen and Foggy, who both represent two opposite sides of morality. Foggy has an unrelenting trust for the law and highly disapproves of Daredevil's methods, whereas Karen has used some of the same methods as Daredevil to seek the truth, and she has also killed two people. Obviously, she is still a morally strong character like Matt and Foggy, but she's still there to represent what could happen if Matt breaks his code and kills Kingpin as he's planning. One character that really started to grow on me as the season went by was Agent Nadeem. His character is very similar to Matt in the way that he has to balance a double life between protecting his loved ones while also trying to fight for the greater good of the city. But they're actually quite opposite in their decisions because we see Matt prioritize the needs of the city and the greater good, which leads to Karen and Foggy getting caught in the crossfire, whereas Agent Nadeem's decision to prioritize providing for his family has put the entire city in danger in the clutches of the Kingpin. Both characters clearly care about doing what's right, and in the end, we see that the only way to really make a difference is to stick to your morals and align yourself with people who have similar morals. I'm not a religious person by any means, but the role of the church in Season 3 of Daredevil is such a unique touch. The church and the priest also played a big role in Season 1, but it's so much more important in Season 3. Matt struggles with the idea of God's will, and eventually decides that the only person who is allowed to control his fate is himself. But he isn't able to escape this idea of good and evil as he struggles with thought of killing Kingpin to end it once and for all. Once again, we see Matt put on a scale of morality between two characters. On the one hand, we have Father Lantom, who represents the positive influence of God's will, and then you have Wilson Fisk, who represents the will of evil. Or should I say, the Wilson of evil. Thank you. These two forces of good and evil have so much power over Matt and his morals. We see this through the mental manifestation of Matt's anger in the form of Wilson Fisk. As he's told by multiple characters throughout the season, if he resorts to killing, then he's no better than Fisk, which is why this vision of Fisk that's haunting him seems to represent Matt's dark side begging to be let out. As much as I love the Daredevil suit in Season 2, having Matt go back to the classic black suit and having Agent Poindexter become the evil version of Daredevil was such a good choice. Dex is a version of Matt who never had the same care from the church that Matt had when he was an orphan. This leads him to have less mental stability and strength like Matt has, which is integral to the role of Daredevil. Having him literally be an evil version of Daredevil is yet another reminder of what would happen if Matt breaks his code and kills Fisk. The show ends by having Matt find a balance between these two halves of himself. He doesn't kill Fisk, but he threatens the one he loves most to make sure he stays in prison. It's poetic in a way that Fisk is taken down in the same way that he's taken advantage of every single person that follows him. By the time the season ends with Father Lantom's funeral, we can see that Matt has fully accepted the devil within him and his place in the world, allowing him to finally become the man without fear. Daredevil is so different than anything in the MCU. There are other smaller scale stories like a lot of the earlier MCU films, or even more recently with stuff like Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Black Widow. But these stories are lacking in the compelling characters and the dark themes and atmosphere that Daredevil has. Even the fight scenes in Daredevil are just significantly better than anything in the MCU for the most part. The show relies on using tight spaces to create small-scale action, but with huge stakes. Some of my favorite scenes are the one scene from Season 2 where he's fighting at the biker gang hideout, and the other one in Season 3 when he's trying to escape from the prison. Both of these scenes are some of Matt's coolest and most creative moments while he's fighting. But the best thing about Daredevil is that he's not like every other hero where he kind of just runs through every single person in his way. Obviously he does that sometimes, and it's awesome when he does do that, but most of the time he's getting his ass handed to him, and he's only able to survive and win through his sheer will that he learned from his father. Right now, it's uncertain what the future of Charlie Cox's Daredevil will be, but it sounds like there is a good chance he could be in some upcoming projects. Hearing about a potential cameo in Spider-Man No Way Home and a rumored Daredevil reboot series gives me hope that there are some plans for Matt Murdock in the near future. Discarding Daredevil and its brilliant cast of characters would be a disservice to the fans, so I really hope they can find some way to make it work. So if I had to rate each season of Daredevil, I would go with a 7 out of 10 for Season 1, because it's good, but it's similar to a lot of other origin stories that we've gotten. For Season 2, I'd go with a 5 out of 10 because, like I said, half of it is really, really good, and the other half is not. And for Season 3, I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10 because it is near perfect. There are some story issues, like, the fact that you need to watch The Defenders to understand it, but other than that, it is really good. Let me know what you think of Daredevil and whether you think he might be returning in the next couple months. Now that I'm done with this show, I'm going to need to find something new to watch, so if you have any TV recommendations, let me know down in the comments. Other than that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.